Okay, are we live? Are we alive? Are we alive? Yeah, we're live. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. To be honest, my computer has 29% battery and I can't find the charger. I don't know what's happened to it. But hopefully it's enough time that I could get some ideas out. The title of today's episode is Mind Shifted Variations of the World. And I think a better way to title it is Mind Shifts and... Come on, and letter. Oh, God. Mind Shifts and Variations of the World. I think that's better. I want to speak about the nature of reality and how we don't have access to one kind of reality. We have actually access to two kinds of reality. We have an objective identification of the world around us, and we have a subjective identification of the objectivity we perceive. I find a human being must know what it is. It is like the purpose of it. The questions that we have to ask and the answers we will become. I have noticed that the world is, every day I wake up, the world shows a version of itself to me, or in some sense my state of mind is refined to like that blankness. You see that gap in deep sleep. It allows the mind, I find, to process. I find when we are asleep, our dreams are just ways that our intelligence is trying to figure out what happened the other day. And so it's like, I think I have less than 20 minutes to speak with this battery percentage. What I'm trying to say is, you see the world, then you shift the world. And as you shift the world, the way it shifts, if it is subjective, you will feel more like a mental being. If it's objective, you will feel more like a physical being. And really, in this world of ours, we have to be considerate of both dimensions of man's intelligence. Somebody once said, to live a fulfilled life, you got to experience that your life journey in its full dimensions. What that means is, you're not here just to walk on one road. You're here to see the world that you, in some sense, have been born in. And you have to choose your allegiances. You see, my allegiance for a long time was to the social cultural program. What that means is, anytime I felt I was deviating from my cultural acceptance, my acceptance of how society should be, I felt a sort of inefficiency, a disharmony. What I mean by that is that we have to see a world and then be the world, be in that world. It's like, how would I say it? Sorry about that, guys. I don't know. You know what it is? It's I'm trying to say that we see the world, and then what we see, we still have conscious control of it behind our eyes. When I was younger, it was as if the concept of observation and action were joined. As if anything I observed, it led to an action. It was like as if something would happen and it would make something happen within me. And so it reached a point I realized the only reason something happened externally to me that made something happen within me was because there was some sort of pattern of recognition of the behavior. The action evoked various memories. And so as I'm speaking to you right now, don't think that I'm just in the present moment speaking to you. Language you have to draw from the past. The past is your teacher. It's like all those days where the martial artist was practicing his moves, And you can say enlightenment is the fight. It is when life gains a sort of level of realism that you cannot avoid it by choosing to be artificial. That means that after some point, especially for a lot of children, they're going to realize the world is not here to listen to your inner reality. The world is an external reality with its own agenda. And so if you like, you can attend to it. You can attend to a civilization, to this science project called humanity, where after 4 billion years, we're standing here wondering what we are still. You know, I feel the progress we have made is not in the real world. It is in a linguistic realm. I feel that language has opened our eyes, but our eyes have not truly opened. Experientially. And so the good thing is that as more human beings emerge, there is more attention. So you see, back in the day, we had tribal dynamics. In some sense, there were tribal kind of, how can I say it? Human beings realized together they survive better. They gathered, and eventually they would help the tribe, and eventually there were heroes and villains, and various archetypes presented themselves. You know, it shocked me one day. One day, I just kind of like it clicked for me, and I realized every day I am spending attention externalizing, being externalized phenomena or being internalized phenomena. When people speak, when language comes into the situation, it has to do with the world behind your eyes. When people, in some sense, there is physical requirement of action, it has to do with the world in front of your eyes. And your relationship with these two can vary. Eventually, regardless of whatever path you take, regardless of what sort of intuitive mystical endurance finds you, you're going to see it's like there is a writer of the moment. Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. The writer of the moment. And the writer of the moment is the authorized reality. You know, when I was younger, I would find certain moments where I had certain freedoms I felt others didn't have internally. And there were moments where others had certain freedoms that I did not have internally. You know, no great mind in some sense lives alone. It's like the world is great. That is why you are great. You know, it's a phenomena of the world. The ownership leaves the subjective domain. We tend to hold ownership. Like, for example, if you're in a room right now, look at this room, right? And just wonder about all this stuff in this room that's here and how you have names and subjective masks upon all objective phenomena, and how our ownership of objective phenomena is a subjective position, right? Because to be honest, nobody can own atoms hovering in empty space. Do you know? But it's our civility. It's the fact that our mind has evolved to a point where we can acknowledge different relationships on certain physical relationships. What does that mean? That means, think of it this way. People throughout history, you know, before language has evolved to a point where there's like the words for things, it's at a point where people are just passing objects daily. And they see an object and they're like, okay, this is an object and that's an object, but they don't have that separation between the objective phenomena. So what I'm trying to say is that in the evolutionary scheme, it was as if we all started from the here and now. There was nothing else except the here and now. You know, and it was only through an evolutionary ability of being self-aware that language came into the picture. Without self-awareness, it's like what self is there to be aware of itself through subjective forms? Right now I'm speaking to you through language. What that means is I throw a symbol in the air, and while it's in the air, if your mind holds it, you see a picture there. I find that a life where the being rejects transformation is a life where you will feel like, okay, think of it this way. The human being is evolving, but the human being evolves as much as its environment evolves, because we are in some sense the embodiment, the animate aspect of the environment. You know, it's like right now who is speaking to you is a creature made of atoms that can be found in the periodic table, but the sophistication and the uniqueness of how words are arising from phenomena is the unique thing. It's kind of like realizing nobody has ever had your eyes, and when you live you're doing something no one has ever done. You know, it's as if there are moments where I have bashed myself, I have looked at my future, and I have seen such inevitable emptiness that I have in some sense lost hope. It's like many times you will lose hope until you realize you're not on this ship to find holes in it. And then the mind will change. And then it's as if like the lights of the universe run to find you. I remember usually when I listen to this scholar, his name is Terence McKenna, when I've listened to his lectures, he's a person who I am usually when I listen to him, I feel elevated. But I remember there was one moment he said something that I felt my, if I was a Buddhist, like all my incarnations felt responsible for. And it was that Terence McKenna said he was speaking to like in an art school. He was speaking in an art school, and he said, "The poets have failed us. The poets have failed us." And honestly, like when I heard that sentence, it was as if there was so many memories of mine died. Liberation is not just only like you escaping the responsibility of handling this suffering kind of matrix we find ourselves in. When you become responsible not just for objective phenomena, but for your subjective phenomena. Dear being, you have a mind. And no one's telling you about this because objective values are ruling over us. Our overlords are physical endeavors. My laptop has 12%. If this disconnects, guys, I hope enough words could have found you. You see, it's a battle between experience and the textures of experience. Right now, as I'm speaking, you are having an objective experience. That means regardless of what I say, you are in a physical, embodied, like biomechanical position, you know, biomechanistic position. You know, your body is working based on certain patterns. So we fundamentally are a creature that is made of many patterns. But eventually, as we see beyond our body, we realize our body has come from our world. And when you look at your thoughts, you will realize a lot of them have also come from the world. And it is only when a person receives a thought that they do not expect where there is the revelation of the unknown. And it has to do with what moves first. Does the world move your mind first, or do you move your mind first? And that is the major difference between what you can say having a relationship with the known and with the unknown. Because humanity feels it needs more knowledge. We are forever looking for solutions. And Mr.Within is saying the solution is not what we need. We need to ask the right questions. Because it doesn't matter what solutions we find. Anything you can find a solution to. Anytime there's a problem that exists, the opposite, literally if you saw the opposite of the values of that problem, you would see another reality. No concept comes alone. It's all in a dualistic setting. When you understand this, you will laugh. That means it's like you no longer see good. You see the good. Anytime you see the good, you see the bad as well. You don't see just the bad. Anytime you see something bad, you see the good. The mind opens up its wings of duality and begins, in some sense, the chaos and order of your moment of experience become equal in some sense, and the pilot of consciousness navigates. And so attention moves in various ways. I got 7% battery, guys. Hopefully, I guess we'll end it off with a story. Or let me just say this. You're alive once. Every day happens once. The value of this kind of momentary, temporary life is in its effort and how much it gives rather than takes. I am telling you, just change your mentality for one day. Try it out. One day, wake up and don't take anything from your world and just give and watch what happens. I'm not joking. Like, you may feel as if the ego doesn't feel powerful, because usually the ego is a taking mechanism. It has to take ownership, right? And we even in our civilization and culture, of course, the masculine theme has been identified with ownership, you know? And it's not that it's wrong, it's just that anytime there's a way something is happening, there's also another way it can happen. There is never one way to look at something. When you understand this, you will understand how knowledge works. Every person who is attempting to know something, learn something, it has to do with how much the phenomena they're looking at becomes real for them or is real for them. Excuse me. 4%, guys. This is intense. Okay, we got 60 minutes in. It's not bad. What is truth in a changing world? How do we look at something externally and its value and meaning and implication shifts internally? You know, how many times have we looked at people and we have not seen them, we have seen ourselves in them. The mind has a self-reflective nature. What that means is it takes certain amounts of forms and patterns and uses those to become something, and then uses that reference point to identify with other reference points. So in some sense, our civilization is built upon ideas taking ownership of phenomena, right? And that's what I understood. It's not that you should study. It's like a library is only as helpful as every book you read. You can place it into a proper context. And really, the issue with the educational system is that it does not align everything or direct everything it's teaching to a certain pattern. Right? For me, I realized that nature is not just an external blessing, it is an internal blessing. There has been moments where I have seen certain savage behavior from the human species only to realize in nature that behavior doesn't exist. And I've wondered why. And it's like on some level, when giants fight, you cannot disrupt it. You cannot. There's certain ideological systems in this world that there's no point of even fighting. It's as if you are you're an ant under a rock trying to figure out why that guy's running to work late. It has that sort of immensity. So eventually what happens is you become kind of left in a sort of cosmic solitude. This happens to the mystical mind. Oh my god, I have 4% and I want to say more about this. So guys, probably what's going to happen is like my laptop's going to die because I can't find the charger, and my phone is dead. Jesus Christ. Oh, technology is dying in front of me. What should I do? Anyways, guys, here, I'll say it and then I'll record the rest later on my phone when I charge it. But I simply want to say, you're alive once, and you give meaning to what you see. And what you see also gives you meaning. And so you have to learn to not just be a body that's howling a brain around, that has a mind that only awakens when it's forced to. You become a mind than a body. You see the opposite of the way things are being told to you. You think you are not free, and you think you need freedom. This is one view, but another view is you are free. And that which is not your freedom wants to free itself from you, It's as if on some level the person who thought they were ideologically possessed came to realize the idea thought they were possessed by them. And so this is the intensity of man. It's kind of, we are at an era of blind machines. That's the era we're going into. In the next 100 years, we're going to see this. We're going to see chaos in technology, which is going to cause man to look at things through a new order. It's believe it or not, life is not a snapshot. It's not literally, you can't. This is why anybody who feels life is a snapshot of belief, it's like, get out of here. It changes too much to be defined by one set of eyes when there's 8 billion. And so the freedom of man is to realize that these 8 billion creatures on this rock are journeyers. Right? This is what civilization and the governing powers of civilization have not understood. It's not about winning or losing. You know, we all lose. It doesn't matter what you have. Even Alexander the Great, when he passed away, he was on a boat with his arms open, and people said, why? When I say he was on a boat with his arms open, it was a kind of cremation ceremony where the great being at the time would in some sense be put in a boat, and the boat would be set on fire, and the boat would slowly go, like the corpse of the person would be put on the boat. And so Alexander the Great's arms were open simply to say that everybody see, I conquered, I reached the highest position, but even I am leaving empty-handed. And it is the fear of death that makes you forget your life, the value of being in it. That's what I didn't understand for a long time. I thought every day I have to wake up and what I'm seeing has to have a sort of meaning, or it has to refer to things in a certain way. Then I realized the world is perfect. It was man's mindset that saw the imperfection. You see, this world has no problem. You think the atoms of this world care if they're changing? If they're moving around? You think energy cares if it transforms, you know, from potential to kinetic, from kinetic to potential? You think, and the energy that scientifically they say, you know, it cannot be created or destroyed. You think that energy has anything to do with our thoughts? You see, the level of existence, on a level of just being, pure being, and a level of doing things are two different states, right? This is what people don't understand. They don't realize happiness is a state when you look at how things are being. It only comes from there. But on some level, it happens like the suffering that we see comes from an individual sense of a doership throughout the day. So the whole mystical angle is to kind of looking at the psychology and saying, how is the psychology, and who is keeping it there? You know, and this was kind of Carl Jung's endeavor to make the unconscious conscious. Because if you don't, you will move unconsciously. It's as if, like, you know, a person who has fallen in a river of manifestation must attempt to get out of this river. And what that means is you either have to learn to embrace change, or you have to look at life changelessly. And attempts at looking at life changelessly, if you look at life changelessly through the mind, you will see an empty ego. The emptiness of the ego is the most changeless thing. That means the silence between the words that I say is the most eternal thing. The words that I say, they, just like lifetimes, they're like, imagine as I'm speaking right now, like you see that these words bring about images. So similarly, it's kind of like human beings are the poetry of the earth, you know? And so when Terence McKenna said, the scholar said, the poets have failed us, he was saying it to an auditorium filled with artists. And when he said, the poets have failed us, he meant that humanity has failed to update its story, its kind of major universal narrative on life in accordance to its inner state. That means the external world is not seeing who you are behind your eyes. And you have a responsibility as a citizen to, in some sense, enlighten the governing power. What that means is, it's instead of man thinking, like, here's the thing, this is the world divided nowadays. This is 2019 for you, philosophically. Some people feel imagination is the truth. Some people feel imagination is not the truth. And those people who feel imagination is not the truth, they are only left in the objective realm. At most, they acknowledge speech as nice sounds. You know, singing, watching a singer will become the most spiritual experience. If you in some sense deny how that imagination is a communication of the unknown to you, right? Because most people take ownership. Again, the ego wants to own things. It even wants to own the thoughts it has on things. Oh man, 2% battery. So I guess, guys, I'll end it here. There's going to be a part 2 to this, hopefully. And the mind shifts, and it provides various variations. I find we are oscillating as a attributeless witnessing attention between multidimensional experience and singular experience. Multidimensional experience, it's like the component of our intelligence that has to do with us experiencing things, that becomes multidimensional. But the point of our intelligence that has to do with just acknowledging how everything is here, that leads to the existential awareness, right? So I'm just saying that behind your eyes, there are worlds that you're being that you have to, in some sense, become conscious of. Thanks for tuning in, guys. 1%, nice. Much blessings and namaste. Hang in there for part 2.